Hey there, everyone. I'm Nick Goblirsch, the host of the Buckets of Change podcast. I want to thank all of you for taking the time to download, subscribe, and or listen to the show wherever you found it. For those of you that have been listening and have been subscribed to the show since the show launched, thank you for having me. And if you've stumbled across the show, I'd love for you to hit the subscribe button so each and every Thursday when these shows post, and we record these videos, or I record these videos for YouTube, they post every Friday. That way, when they post, you get notified and you can watch and catch up. So in this episode, episode 6, I wanted to talk about how we respond and why we respond to the uncontrollable change around us. I want to tell you a quick story, something that happened this week with my daughter. My daughter, Abigail, is an amazing kid. I'm so proud of what she's accomplished in the 17 years she's been on this planet. She is a dancer. She used to compete as a dancer and won many awards. She's now a brainiac in school. She does all of this without any pressure from her mom and I. And it's really cool for those of you also that know this to have children and see what they become, especially when they start becoming independent thinkers. And the overall goal, I would think, is, at least my opinion as far as parenting, is prepare them for the real world and give them the tools that they can then make proper decisions, deal with the consequences, and live a happy life, right? It's not always going to be happy, but that they make the right choices to seek as much happiness as possible through this long life that we have. And this week, my daughter dealt with something that most kids at 17 don't really have to do. And nothing drastic, but what came up this week was a great opportunity for her to learn something. And my daughter is in the process of choosing schools, choosing a college. She is accelerated in school, and I think it makes absolute sense, and no one would disagree, that she is bound for college. She wants to study math in school, which is crazy because I was this math major in high school, and yet I chose to study art. I don't know why. I wasn't thinking, I don't know, times are different. Back then, I guess the whole idea was you had to go to college, and then I just made this decision to do something. Again, if you know me and you know the show, I'm always making the decisions to seek out things, whether they're risky or not, that make me happy and provide happiness so I can be more present with the people around me. So my daughter, being a field hockey player, has been sought out by numerous schools over the past few years. And my wife has been very active in getting her in front of coaches and taking her to clinics and tournaments and everything. So it's fun. It's really fun. So she finally decided what school she wanted to go to. And unfortunately, several months back, she had spoken to another school in regards to possibly going there. Now, it is every coach's job, I'm assuming, in whatever NCAA collegiate sport is, you want to stack your deck as far as rosters for the coming years. I'm sure that makes you look good with the athletic director. And I remember, if I can put myself in that person's shoes, I can understand that when you're hiring for positions, it's really good. It feels good to be able to go to a hiring manager and say, yep, we found your candidate, and they start on Monday. And it does kind of throw a monkey wrench in it when that plan doesn't work out. Now, people are different. People make decisions. My daughter, my family, we all make different decisions. Hopefully we communicate. I've talked about that before. We communicate properly with those individuals that might be impacted by those decisions. And my daughter ran it by us and decided that rather than going to this first school she talked to, which she was engaged by that coach, she decided to go to another school. And we prepared her for that conversation. She was a little bit apprehensive to have that conversation because obviously the perception is she's giving this first coach bad news and would have to tell this individual, this coach, something that they don't want to hear. Now, in my experience, anytime I've heard the news that a new hire that I may have hired or someone that I was depending on could no longer meet that commitment, it was just all part of the plan, right? It was simply part of how it was to hire jobs. People make decisions. I was in situations where we give an offer to a candidate. The candidate goes to their employer, resigns, tells them what the offer is, and then they get countered, and then they stay, and then suddenly I have to go back to the hiring manager and tell them that I have to go through another 6 months of trying to find a candidate to fill their role. And it creates a little bit of pain. Sometimes, a majority of the time when things don't go the way we want to, that's the pain we feel. We start getting a little bit fearful. The fear sets in, a lot of what ifs. and we have to respond to that. So my daughter reached out to this coach, told her the news, and me, in thinking that that coach would respond in a specific way, did not respond in the way that we had prepared my daughter. Now, again, how people respond is really absolutely out of our control. But I think what we have a lot of control over is how we respond to things and how we respond to change. So when this individual heard the news that my daughter didn't want to play for their team and didn't want to go to school at that school, which was a big decision in regards to her academics and the type of major she wanted, she really thought it out, that coach was upset, very, very upset, and kind of conveyed to my daughter that the coach was upset. And suddenly, rather than just going through a normal conversation, my daughter needed to now respond to that. And over the last several years, as my daughter and I have communicated, I spent a lot of time educating my family and my kids on emotional intelligence, really understanding how we impact the feelings of others and how our feelings impact others, and also how others' feelings impact ourselves. And it was amazing. I would have thought at 17, if that was me, I would have crumbled in having that type of response. I would have gotten extremely defensive, over-apologetic, second-guessing myself over and over again. And my daughter, the way she described it and described it to my wife, again, we didn't get involved. This was a decision she needed to make on her own and deal with the consequences of that decision. She handled it like a pro. She conferred with some few people to make sure that she didn't do anything out of line. And eventually it was a conversation that had to happen. And my daughter gained experience from it. So when Abby and I were talking afterwards, I said to her, Abby, there's a reason why that happened to you. And the reason why that happened to you is to help you understand and have the capabilities to respond in an appropriate way when and if that happens again. Now, at 17, she had to experience this. And in my entire career, I've had a lot of conversations with people that those individuals didn't want to have, and conveyed a lot of information and news to individuals of news they didn't want to hear. And that news and that information always had consequences, especially with me. When I made the decision to leave a 20-year career as an HR professional and pursue entrepreneurship, that communication definitely changed the dynamic in my home because of how everybody responded to it. I didn't understand how people would respond to that. But then on the flip side, I then needed to respond to how everyone was starting to interact with me in regards to that decision. Now, we hear this philosophy of everything happens to you for a reason. And I get that. I think that's a way of clarifying that que sera, sera, like things are going to happen to you, and that's you need to find out the positive and then take it away from it. And it's hard for people to do that. It's hard for people to, even for me, to just say, well, that's the reason why that happened. But after experiencing what happened to, or not even say what happened to, what impacted my daughter this week, I started to think that maybe a mindset change may help in truly believing that things happen to you for a reason. And I believe it is that change is inevitable around us. Things are going to happen that we have zero control over, whether you're in an environment, in a corporate setting where suddenly you have a new boss that you're not getting along with, or your company's going through a reorganization, or suddenly it's year end and you find out that they're downsizing and climates are changing, or you decide that you're in a house you no longer can afford, or whatever it is. I think rather than trying really hard, like I'm a very positive person, but trying really hard to understand why and making sense of why things happen to you that you don't want to happen to you, or that don't go the way you want them to go. I think maybe just saying to yourself, the reason why this happened is to teach me how to respond when this happens again. And I spent a lot of time this week, a brief amount of time, just reinforcing that with Abby and teaching her that the reason why this happened is so when this happens again, you understand a little bit more about yourself and a little bit more how to respond. Because we can initiate a lot of things. We can do a lot of things where we try really hard to control what's happening around us. And usually when things are out of our control, we feel fear. And trust me, I've been there too. I've been on projects where things aren't going as planned. I may be going over budget or over time, and the fear sets in, and suddenly I start doing these things called the shouldas. I start thinking, rather than being in the moment and dealing with what I have control over now, I start anticipating what I might have control over in the future, and I also start saying to myself, what should I have had control over in the past? So what should have happened in the past and what should happen in the future? And we can go through this shoulda merry-go-round that just keeps us going and going and going and creating more anxiety and stress and takes us completely out of the situation we're in. And I tried really hard to ensure that my daughter embraced the situation rather than thinking what she should have done or should have said on the phone call, and what she may or may not, based on that interaction, should or shouldn't do if she crosses paths with this individual or deals with somebody similar to that. I'm working with a client that is doing that exact same thing, where they're in a situation, a job situation that is not going the way they had expected, and in having a conversation with me is starting to do where maybe things would be going better if I should have done this and this and this. Or maybe it might get better if I should do this and this and this, rather than dealing with the situation at hand and really embracing the fact that things are happening right now to teach you how to respond when these things happen in the future. I think the shouldas try to manipulate us and tell us that we can control things that we can't control. And just unfortunately, we cannot do that. Change is a volatile thing and will impact us whether we choose to create change or seek out change for ourselves, or things happen around us that we didn't anticipate. Because I'm sure when my daughter called the coach to have that conversation, expected it to go a certain way, and how that interaction was not how my daughter expected, then had to really think on her feet. And I believe that is a skill that can be taught, that can be learned, because it is much better for you and your well-being and your peace of mind, as long as you have those skill sets to deal with the specific change that happens to you. And even when you decide to, and I'm a big proponent, and I talk about this with my clients, when you make significant career change, and you can, do that as many times as you want in your life, or job changes. Again, something so important of providing to your family, making a change in that has a serious impact. But if you have the right tools and learn from every opportunity you have to learn where change impacts you, you can make those changes and transitions and transformations easier. And trust me, I love helping people with that as well. I do it every day in what I do, and I get to teach others to do that. So those of you that are watching and listening, you will interact with individuals, and you may anticipate those interactions to not go as planned. You may think that a path that you're on may stay the way it is and stay the course, but an uncontrolled pivot may happen where you have to respond to that. I'm telling you that all those things happen for a reason, to teach you how to respond when those events happen again. And thinking that way may be a little bit more proactive than having, which I've done before, having rose-colored glasses and constantly think, well, things happen for a reason, and stop it there. Because when I understand why things happen, it helps me really realize how to deal with those things as they happen in the future. Guys, thank you for watching this brief episode 6 of the Buckets of Change podcast. If you are someone that is in a situation like most of my clients, where your things are amiss in either your job and your career, and you are a little bit confused of whether or not your purpose is going to be fulfilled, or you are going to find a place where you're learning and become happier doing what you love to do, and things are awry, but you're just not asking yourself the right questions, there's a link in the show notes to take this really quick assessment. If I could go back, I've said this before, go back and just ask myself specific questions, it would have helped me kind of navigate my transition out of my corporate life into an entrepreneurial life, or whatever path you may take, a new career, new job, of asking the right questions to get the right answers, to take the right action a little bit quicker, and be a little bit more clear in my head rather than so confused. It's called the Buckets of Change Assessment. Takes less than a minute. It asks you a specific set of questions, and then the response you get kind of really lets you know where you are. Is change imminent? Is change immediate? But it may help in kind of knowing the signs of whether or not a career or job transition or transformation may be in your near future or your soon to happen future. You can follow me on all the socials. The links are in the show notes. And if you'd like to be part of the conversation, my email is in the show notes as well. Feel free to email me at nick@bucketsofchange.com. I'd love to be able to share your stories like I shared some stories today. You guys have an amazing day. Thank you for subscribing. And don't forget, if you can, rate the show wherever you are. It gets the show out there and lets more people know about this message of change. You have an amazing day, and I will talk to you very, very soon.